I am in the production business. I understand what is worth doing for ratings. I understand what is worth doing when the industry is canceling one black guy. I know what happens when they are going to elevate another. And I know what happens when they don't care about either of them. This is how quarterbacking go. So the question is, hey, your quarterback just got sacked. Did we know we was fin to sack your quarterback? We absolutely did. It was a play, buddy. We've been rehearsing it, working it out, making sure that at some point, when you get to this level, we can make sure we knock you from a $20 million man to putting in the news that people won't hire you no more.
Spoke to 50, then she said 50. And this is exact words that came out of her mouth. 50 does not determine what goes in and goes out.
Every controversy comes with a public cut and a hidden one that never survived the edit. Katt Williams has always said that when chaos plays out on camera and the check's still clear, the play was drawn up long before the lights came on. This saga carries that same signature: headlines, investigations, dramatic footage, the version meant for mass consumption, tidy enough to keep powerful interests comfortable and off stage. But beyond the glossy streaming narrative sits a rougher truth, a witness who claims a full picture and was sidelined, a founding partner who lost a major stake yet still shields the brand, and a filmmaker who, according to insiders, decided early who would speak and who would be muted. Katt's point still stands. Nothing in an illusion-driven industry is accidental. Not the stars, not the scapegoats, and not the voices that vanish in the final cut. So tonight isn't about replaying a downfall. It's about asking a harder question. If this story was engineered from the opening snap, what was edited out? And who had to be pushed into silence to frame the narrative the way you were meant to see it? High voltage.
Everything that happens in a business, everything that happens in a business that's based off of pretend, that seems like a setup, is.
Yes. What I'm saying is, if Jussie Smollett and Lee Daniels for a living make stories that are not real, and they make them so good that people believe them and buy them, and that's what business they're in, why would you think it would be weird if they flipped out and said a story that turned out to not be true?
Why? Why would we think that if they are capable of doing that for a living?
That's what they do for a living. They do that 300 episodes. Is take something fictitious and make it seem real.
Katt lays it out with zero padding. In an industry built on illusion, anything that feels staged probably is. He's not dealing in abstract ideas. He's pointing at writers, producers, and executives who spend their lives making fiction look real, then using the same machinery to shape real people and real outcomes. From his perspective, scandals, collapses, and headline-grabbing conflicts aren't sudden accidents. Their narratives are drafted behind closed doors long before the public ever notices. Once you hear it framed that way, Gene Deal's account of the documentary stops sounding like a simple breakdown in communication and starts feeling like a story that was already written. The long-time security presence, the childhood connection, the business partner holding a major stake, and Gene's own perspective were meant to arrive together and push the narrative past a polished, platform-safe surface. But the moment power brokers step in, the real pattern becomes clear. They always decide which insiders get a voice and which truths never make it to the final cut. High voltage.
Like 50 called me up and, they got him on the phone, man. He was just talking. We was talking about old time. Sit down with Black Hands, sit down with, with Puff Kids, the whole Puff situation, and this documentary that he's going to be doing. You know what I'm saying? So I told him that I was going to, have Kirk and Tim. Kirk will be the one who talk about the business part of it. Tim will be the one who talk about the growing up phase with Diddy and everything and over there working in the record industry with him and stuff like that. They was like family. And I was going to talk about, the street stuff, what was going on with Bad Boy, with the security, with Wolf, with the city college, with, the time that I knew about when I was with him up until about early 2004 or something like that. But basically the streets and then the traveling with him and the atmosphere and everything, and then go back into the Notorious Big stuff with the Tupac and the whole 9 yards, all the stuff that I knew. You know what I'm saying? So we was talking and he sounded like, yo, listen here. They gonna spare no expense with this whole documentary. So I said, all right.
According to Gene, it began the way major industry stories always do, with a call from producers who knew exactly who held the real insight. They emphasized that no one understood the inner machinery better than the person who escorted him through every club entrance, studio session, and guarded hallway. That proximity was the whole point. They didn't approach Gene as background texture or a minor voice, but as a central pillar. Someone meant to ground the entire documentary with first-hand perspective and authority, giving the story weight far beyond surface-level commentary.
It was, I spoke to Tim and I spoke to Kirk Burrows. And I was like, yo, because I had Tim's number. Tim didn't know how to get into touch with Kirk. Kirk didn't know how to get into touch with Tim. But Kirk was trying to tell me, give him the number with Tim. I said, nah, I ain't doing that. So I gave one of the producers the number in the whole 9 yards to get in touch with Tim because I want to see him get money because I know Tim got a hell of a story with Pop. So then I talked to Tim and I told him, yo, listen here, man, we should go in as a package deal. All three of us, we could tell a hell of a story about this whole documentary. You know what I'm saying? From front to start. Then whatever stuff that they get and everything like that. So let's go in there and ask them for 50 a piece. You know what I'm saying? So Tim was like, what, yo, Gene, whatever, go ahead like that. Kirk was like, yeah, okay, cool, Gene. It was like a general census that we was gonna do this in a whole package deal. You know what I'm saying? And then I started speaking to the producers and everything like that because 50 had told me himself that they was going to spare no cost in doing this because he wanted to tell the story and he wanted to tell the story like it was supposed to be told in there.
Gene says the vision was never about a single voice. It was designed as a full-spectrum package from day one. Gene would cover the streets and security side. Tim would speak on the childhood and formative years. And Kirk Burrows would handle the business history and paperwork behind the brand. 3 insiders, each holding a different piece of the puzzle, stepping in together with real stakes in the project in exchange for putting their names, faces, and proof on record. According to Gene, that structure had support early on, and there were no issues until the tone shifted at the top. That's when the narrative changed. Suddenly, the man who had witnessed everything firsthand was framed as asking for too much. Not because the story lacked value, but because the perspective carried more weight than the final cut was willing to handle.
The director, I gotta get her name, man, because it don't even sound. I want to put her on blast because she was telling me, she was saying to me that what I was asking for was crazy and they wasn't spending money like that. I'm talking about you got footage, you got clothing, you got I was doing footage, I had pictures, all the stuff that I had, you could figure out a way to pay them, brother, and stuff like that. And then I was telling her about some prices that I've already received and I had the invoices to show it. And then she was calling me like I was lying. I'm like, yo, who do you think you're talking to? You know what I'm saying? And she was talking about, there's no way nobody paid. Nobody what? I say, first of all you people come with these documentaries and stuff. The first thing you tell me, y'all tell these people out here that y'all don't pay, and y'all pay. If you can make a picture look like $10,000-$15,000, you know what I'm saying? You can sit here and tell me that you're gonna pay me for my time sitting right down here with y'all. You understand? So then, one thing led to another, and I was like, all right, well then, F you, I spoke to 50, and then she said 50, and this is exact words that came out her mouth. 50 does not determine what goes in and goes out of this documentary. And he definitely don't pay, he determine what somebody get paid. It's not his documentary like that. I was like, oh, so if it's not his documentary and I spoke to him like that, I don't need to be doing nothing with you because I'm doing this on the strength of him. But you gonna pay me if I do it. So it went back and forth, you know what I'm saying, for a little bit. And then they had Kirk Burrows giving me calls and everything like that. What are you calling me for? You know what I'm saying? I'm not, get out of here. I know what kind of dude you is anyway. Me and you cool and everything, Kirk, but don't call me about no business with this stuff like that. And then what I found out is that he was making a deal, cutting a deal for himself as well as Tim. You understand? And I was trying to get a deal for all three of us. You understand? So that's how them industry cats go. You know, that's what.
This is where Gene says everything turned upside down. The moment real money and real control entered the conversation. The resistance didn't come from the face on the poster. Came from the director. According to Gene, she dismissed numbers as unreasonable, waved off proof of what other productions had already paid him, and made it clear that branding doesn't equal authority because the final calls lived in her chair. That's when the energy shifted. While Gene was pushing for a fair share, not just for himself but for the two men he brought into the project, he discovered the ground was moving beneath him. Quiet talks were happening. Separate agreements were taking shape. And Tim and Kirk were suddenly being courted on the side almost overnight. The person with the footage, the photos, and the most uncomfortable truths was recast as the problem. It's a familiar industry move. The closer someone gets to the sharp edges of the truth, the faster they're labeled difficult.
First and foremost, you got your man Russell Simmons out here dealing with these young girls. You understand? Kim Porter was one of them. She was then passed from Russell Simmons to Andre Harrell. Do you understand what I'm saying? I'm just gonna give it to you. You know what I'm saying? Because these we out here playing, talking all this, acting like they know what they talking about. She was working for Russell first, then she was passed over to Andre Harrell. You understand? So now Andre Harrell has her in the office and stuff like that. And it was said that it was a girl also in Uptown, and I don't know if it was Kim. I don't know if it was Kim or one of her friends walked in on Andre Harrell getting a fellatio and was given a red Mercedes-Benz 300C for keeping her mouth closed behind it. You understand? Because when Kirk Burrows was talking about Puff did that or whatever like that, you understand? It actually happened to Andre Harrell up in Uptown Records. Kim Porter's at the desk because Andre Harrell is doing Russell Simmons a favor by giving her a job over there. Because now Russell Simmons is trying to get her friend Kamoya. Because all of them was actors. I mean, all of them was models. Kim, Kamoya, and they was young girls. So now her and Al get together and everything like that. Check this out. Kim didn't get with Puff until Puff got his deal. Because you gotta realize, Misa Kim was cool. Kim didn't get with Puff until after Puff got his deal. So all that, he got her from Al and stuff like that. Nah. She went with the money was, bro. She went with the money. And you can call it whatever you want to. You understand what I'm saying? That's how it...
Even the romance gets reshaped in the polished retelling.
Even the romance gets reshaped in the polished retelling. In the clean dramatic version, he's cast as a villain who snatched Kim Porter away like a made-for-TV melodrama. But when you listen to the people who were actually present, that storyline starts to fall apart. Gene's account paints a different picture. No one was forced. No one was taken. She moved toward influence and opportunity the same way the industry quietly teaches everyone to do. That taken away narrative didn't last because it was accurate. It lasted because it was simple, emotional, and easy to market. and because it kept audiences distracted from asking tougher questions about power, pressure, and how much control really existed inside that circle.
Said Big had paid for his funeral through his budget. You know what I'm saying? So if anybody would know that, Kirk Burrow would know that. And I heard Wayne Barrows came out and said some shit, but to defute that. You know what I'm saying? But if Miss Wallace got a check and the check, if she got Biggie's, if they had Biggie's budget and that was taken out, money was taken out that budget for his funeral, he did use it. And if anybody knew that, Kirk Burrows would know that. It was his manager. Big had told me that he was going to get rid of them because they didn't know what they was doing before he died. You know, I had a conversation with Big. Big said, yo, I'm getting rid of them because they the one effing me up, because they the one that convinced him to sell his publishing and his marketing to Puff. They was Puff boys. I guess they met in school or whatever like that. But Big was going to get rid of them. But because he died and his mother didn't know the business, she kept him around for years. If you look at anything that happened with the Notorious Biggs and his camp, you see Wayne Barrows on there as executive producer. And he was just a manager of some of Big affairs. He was executive producers of damn near everything that went on that had to do with. If Miss Wallace was the executive producer, he was the executive producer too. Look at some of the things that was done. And now he's suing, trying to get money from Faith because of, he's saying that she has to pay the Wallace estate, and Miss Wallace is dead, Big is dead. If the estate is anything, it's CJ, Tatiana, and Faith. Then there was a situation that somebody said long time ago in the office. They caught Kirk giving Puff a fellatio in the office. Now that was the rumor that was going around. How true it is? They was lovers. It came out in his lawsuit. He tried to say that Puff was, what he said, him. But if somebody you, how you letting them come stay at your house every Wednesday night after the club? I think they were boyfriends, you know. I think, my honest opinion, I think Kirk was in love with Puff to a certain degree. And Puff was using him, and Kirk was giving up the bujina to him. Anything Puff asked him to do, he would do. You know, he'd go at people, he'd talk. Kirk would talk on the behalf of Puff. And I believe that that was his man to a certain degree in his mind. And the way he was saying documentary, you could feel that they had a relationship. He was hurt behind being Justin's godfather. He allowed Puff to tell him that he was caught up with Misa and everything like that. He believed all this. I got out of it. I don't know what you and other people got out of it. He was saying like he was a scorn lover.
But how did you find out that he gave Diddy fellatio? You know who they came from?
Well, we heard that a long time ago. Like when I was working for Bad Boy. I heard that rumor a long time ago. I was working for Bad Boy that Kurt was caught up giving them the fellatio in the office. And they got rid of one of the interns for walking in on him or something like that. You understand? But then Kurt come out in this documentary in this lawsuit, and say he was giving Puff was making him giving him fellatios and the bugina. That's in his lawsuit. But I guess if Cassie is a scorn lover,
he did witness the company rise at full speed. And he did find himself pushed to the margins while the brand moved into billionaire territory, leaving others who helped build the foundation watching success from the outside rather than sharing in it. But when you really listen to Gene, a deeper layer comes into focus. And it's not just about paperwork or percentages. It's about emotion and allegiance. He describes Kirk not merely as a former partner, but as someone intensely devoted, willing to endure firings, fallout, and personal loss while still shielding the same system by carefully speaking around anything that could expose everyone involved. By the time the documentary reaches a streaming audience, it feels like a fearless insider finally telling his truth. But if Gene and Katt's perspective holds, what viewers are actually getting is a deliberately selected voice. Someone wounded enough to make Diddy appear ruthless, yet loyal enough to avoid exposing the most sensitive financial realities and buried truths. A figure positioned exactly where the industry prefers him. Compelling, conflicted, and safely confined between the lines, far from the official record. High voltage.
Accidental, or you will be hearing who's losing money. In all of these situations, it's only the artist that's losing. Somebody makes big money. When these rappers get killed, not incidental. Somebody made $100 million and now don't have to talk to that artist or none of their crew, don't have to validate none of their contracts. Now only got to deal with the mama, only got to see her once a year, and it's over. And the money goes up and up and up. So they killed this $20 million guy, but they reached $60 million.
By now, the pattern is impossible to ignore. Katt describes an industry where nothing happens by accident, where stars are treated like multi-million-dollar assets, built up carefully and discarded the moment they stop serving the plan. Gene walks you through how the one person with the clearest view of everything suddenly became a liability the second he asked to be compensated like his insight had real value. And Kirk remains positioned right in the center, co-founder, deeply connected insider, wounded participant, and quiet gatekeeper, revealing just enough to frame Diddy as ruthless, but never enough to ignite the entire machine. He's emotional enough to feel credible, yet too costly, too complicated, and too controlled to speak freely. That balance is not accidental.